Hello, everyone, and welcome to Current's webinar, Focus on Digital Fundraising. It's a follow-up to our recent coverage of public media fundraising. I'm Karen Everhart, Managing Editor of Current. Each of my guests today have unique insights on public media's performance in digital fundraising. They know a lot about the strategies and tactics that can help stations improve. Melanie Colson led Greater Public's 2020 evaluation of digital fundraising practices. The study produced the Public Media Online Fundraising Scorecard, and it ranks stations' practices and tools below other nonprofits. The study also found that many stations aren't able to make basic changes that would improve the online donation experience. Melanie wrote about the scorecard and barriers to improving digital fundraising in a recent commentary for Current. Thank you, Melanie, for doing that and for helping us convene this conversation.
Oh, absolutely. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you. Yoon Lee is Senior VP at M&R. It's an agency that specializes in digital marketing, fundraising, and advocacy. She worked in public media at KQED before she joined the Smithsonian as Director of Digital Media Philanthropy. Yoon led the most successful museum Kickstarter campaign to date, Reboot the Suit, raised more than $700,000 for NASA to conserve and display the spacesuits of astronauts Neil Armstrong and Alan Shepard. And Jamie Siegel directs ECRM and digital marketing at Chicago Public Media. WBEZ, as we all fondly like to call it, is one of the radio stations that got a high score on the online fundraising scorecard. Her background includes direct-to-consumer, digital, and social marketing. And that experience has informed Jamie and how she has made changes at WBEZ since 2019. So welcome to all of you, and thanks to everybody who's joining us on the webinar. I want to invite all the attendees to share any questions you have in the question box, and we'll be getting to those soon. Melanie, I want to start with you.
Yes, ma'am. I had a lot to say, so I guess.
You did. I really appreciate how you laid it all out there, and I really enjoyed working with you on that piece. You described public media's underperformance in online fundraising as a problem that stations really need to prioritize and address with some urgency. What did you see in terms of the key shortcomings that stations should focus on first?
Well, sure. And again, thanks everybody for being here, and really excited to talk to you about this because I think this is a big need we have and a priority that we should all be looking at in 2022 and working on together as an industry. So just wanted to say that. So as we talked about, like we did the mystery shopper, secret shopper study in 2020, and as we got the data back and we were looking at and comparing public media to other nonprofits. By the way, just to back up for a second, the study we did looked specifically at public radio stations because PBS had previously in 2019 did a similar study looking at television stations. So just to keep the sample clean, we looked specifically at that. But in both groups, we saw that there was this big need or this kind of shortfall that was happening. I think it's a couple things. I think that it has to do with capacity within stations and organizations. I think it also has to do with the tools that we're using. And I think it's just, again, prioritizing and realizing that, especially now, we've had this rapid move towards digital platforms during the pandemic. Shopping, listening, viewing, it's all happening there. And we really just have to find our way in that space to connect with donors in new ways.
What do you think have been the biggest barriers for stations in improving their online fundraising performance?
Well, as I wrote in the article, I think, again, it's you have to kind of keep at it. It's a slow burn. And Jamie's going to talk about that, and I think Yoon is too, where it's just you have to keep building on success and start somewhere. And so I think doing that, strategic planning around it is really important. And I think the relationship we have with on-air drives. in some cases where they really are the main driver of revenue. It's a different model than any other nonprofit has, where we just, turn on the mics and the money comes in and the goal is met. And I think sometimes there's that thinking of like, phew, we made that goal. Now what's the next goal? Whereas this really needs to be integrated with that and needs to be a long-term strategic priority.
Well, you mentioned that public TV stations weren't a key focus of the study, yet there were public TV stations in it, and they ended up scoring higher than radio stations. Why is that?
Oh, yes. So the stations that, those were from the 2019 study, the first study. So, and the main reason why we looked at radio only was because of Passport. And so we know that there was like a different model and a different path through donation forms. So that was the main focus of, or why, the only reason why we really excluded that. And also just a lot more thank you gifts being offered. So, so that was one piece of it. I think one thing is that it has to do also with some of the donation tools, the donation form tools, and that stations are using. There were a couple in particular that are not as advanced as some others, and that really held some of the stations back in terms of how they scored. One issue, for example, was, and I brought this up, I think in the next slide, is around, is your form mobile responsive or is it a mobile native form? And how easy is it to use? And a good number of the stations had forms that were not specifically designed for the mobile experience.
I see. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yoon, I'm going to bring you into the conversation now. And a little bit of background about you. When you worked at KQED, you were involved in creating a pledge-free channel for members during pledge drives, and you also experimented with text-based campaigns. But your biggest digital campaign to date was for the Smithsonian, was Reboot the Suit, which everybody can see right now. And I wanted to ask you, when you left public media, how did that liberate you to create and innovate in the digital space?
Yeah, thank you, Karen. And thank you for inviting me to this conversation. I'm really excited to be here. I also just wanted to note that Reboot the Suit on Kickstarter was probably the biggest, most publicly seen and heard of campaign that I've run, but not the biggest campaign that I've run.
Okay.
But, it actually kind of points to what you're talking about in terms of being liberated from public media. Leaving KQED made me actually that much more aware of what public media's strengths and weaknesses are. First, that stations are really blessed with that megaphone that radio and television affords, right? And, this is something that all other nonprofits have to pay for to get on the same playing field as with what you already have innately. But there is a weakness to that strength that I think Melanie really alluded to. The shadow side of having all of that easy exposure is that you are underdeveloped on the things that other organizations have had to strengthen over so many years. And so, for instance, when I think about moving over to the Smithsonian, I recognize that we had this dependence on membership and benefits at KQED and at many other stations as well. That dependence was really an eye-opener for me because the Smithsonian also has membership programs, but they lack the kind of benefits that are typically associated with other museums, and that the Smithsonian is free. So you're not going to get that free admission by becoming a member. And the lack of that really made me need to up my game on the strategy and tactical side. I could not rely on benefits and swag to motivate people to become members. And I didn't have that surround sound created by Pledge to really reinforce my campaigns. So that means working harder on figuring out what creates an environment of giving and direct response, what sorts of engagements and cultivation need to be in place to develop relationships that are at scale. And, what could we do to strengthen every single campaign, every single email that goes out to maximize returns. So therein was like that big challenge, where do we find new audiences? And thus, actually, this Kickstarter was really about tapping into a huge audience that we normally don't get to speak to. So I think it afforded this insight into these challenges that we didn't really encounter with public media.
Mm-hmm. Now, M&R runs an annual benchmarking study that includes like 7 public media stations. And there are stations of various sizes, along with other types of nonprofits. Are participants in other categories, are they national and local organizations? What's the mix there?
Yes, yes. So benchmarks, it's a report we release every year. It reviews the previous 12 months calendar-based data. This is a big spectrum of nonprofits across many, many different sizes and sectors. So for this year, the 2021 study, there were 220 organizations that participated, which is our most ever. And there were several, probably almost a dozen different sectors, and public media was one of them. Last year it was only 7 organizations, but if you do sign up, you can help make that strengthen that sector and really make this data much more valuable.
How do you see public media's performance in online fundraising as compared to the other nonprofits that are participating in your benchmarking?
Right. Well, you can see, so we have sharing some numbers from our benchmark study. Last year, that pandemic year, that was a benchmark for growth in online revenue across all sectors. It was 32% growth. Not for public media, though. For public media, along with the environmental sector, those 2 sectors saw the very least growth at 21%. I want to say that this is still phenomenal. This is still so remarkable. It's a metric that we rarely see top 11%, and we've been doing this study for a dozen years now. So this is still great, but when you see that difference, that differential between all sectors and even some of these other sectors, there's something missing for public media. You can see this more reflected in the chart next to it too, the online revenue change since 2016. It's a little bit harder to read, but essentially it's showing a 5-year trend, and each bar is the growth since 2016. So the benchmark is that online revenue for all sectors practically doubled since 2016, 100% growth. This is clearly influenced by the hunger and poverty sector, which had an amazing year last year as a result of the pandemic. It was directly related to people responding to COVID-19 issues. But public media is lagging behind at around 60% growth in online revenue since 2016. And you were also behind the curve in 2018 and 2019 as well. So the pandemic kind of showed that there's this opportunity for public media to evolve its services, to evolve its online fundraising, which Melanie's article did such a great job of talking about and pinpointing.
Your advice to stations is to think beyond membership. How much potential for growth do you see in email campaigns?
Yeah, well, another interesting observation that we made in our benchmark study was that we looked specifically at organizations that had membership programs specifically. So this includes public media. So when I look at this slide, this is including public media data. It also included museums and other cultural entities. But basically what we saw that in email, these organizations were really seeing strong growth in emails that featured membership offers, right? Membership is very, very compelling. And it did see like a phenomenal increase in response rates, 33% increase. The really important thing to note here, though, is that these same organizations would also send out fundraising appeals, pure fundraising appeals, not tied to membership, more like unrestricted giving. And the response rate for those messages doubled, more than doubled, 110% increase. So people were not supporting these organizations because they were getting something out of it, right? It wasn't a trade. People were supporting them because of their missions. I think this shows the opportunity that public media has in, not just standing by that pledge model of you get something when you give, you get swag, you get a DVD or whatever it is, but that people are really incentivized and motivated to support the missions of your organizations.
Are there any inhibitors with email campaigns that you see either now or looking ahead to the future?
Oh, of course. I mean, I think, when I put my public media hat back on, one of the key things is that there's a fear of sending too many emails, that there's a challenge in not being able to lay out the case for giving clearly. There's also a reluctance to rely on things like tactics that really work, like deadlines and goals and matches. Like there's a distaste, I think, sometimes for the tactics that strengthen our actual results. Melanie's article shared that revenue from email barely grew in 2019 and 2020. What I see on I wanted to share on this slide is actually a slightly different insight, which is the share of online revenue that's driven by email. So when we look at this, we see that public media had real growth here, like from 11% in 2019 to 16%. The average growth, though, is 19% across all sectors. So the question is, what is inhibiting email growth as a driver of online revenue? If you could do just a little bit better at those things that I was talking about, would your overall revenue pie get bigger? And I think the answer is clearly yes.
Well, what about digital advertising? You've said that you see a lot of potential there. What does it look like for public media?
Yeah, I think if I were to name one key area where public media is lagging, it is most visibly in their investment in digital ads. Investment last year investment in digital ads increased by 33% across all sectors. I mean, I don't have that number for public media, but I'd be curious to know if more stations were investing 33% more of their budgets into, digital advertising. This has probably become the most important source for new lead and new donor acquisition. And by lead, I mean like email subscribers and new donor acquisition for all of my nonprofit clients at M&R. I have clients who have cut out direct mail altogether as an acquisition source because the return on investment on digital ads was so much better. And increasingly it plays this bigger and bigger role in retaining donors and renewing them. And yet when I look at this slide, this is showing for every dollar of online revenue that an organization raises, how much are they investing in online ads? So the average is 11 cents. Public media was 2 cents. This seems like a huge opportunity for growth that could be real low-hanging fruit.
We've had a couple of questions come in while you and I have been chatting, and people want to know about your Kickstarter campaign, how you were able to identify and target an audience. How did that work?
Sure. Well, one of the appeals of doing Kickstarter is that Kickstarter itself, as a brand, as an organization, as a company, has a built-in audience of millions. When you've pledged to a Kickstarter project, you become part of their following, right? You get all their emails and such. Their presence is so enormous, I think, both on social media, their website, they have such an innate audience that they bring with them. That was one of the attractions for us. But when we were doing the spacesuit project for the Air and Space Museum, the other thing we realized was that we were really getting the most donors by tapping into niche audiences. So Kickstarter might have been a bullhorn for us, but it was really just as important to think about the publicity side of what we were doing. This was an opportunity for us to elevate fundraising into a more common mainstream news outlet and make news about raising money, right? Like that almost never happens. So we were able to tap into like really niche news outlets for people who are like major space aficionados or, fans of history and things like that. And that ended up being very, very fruitful for us.
Here's another question that we received earlier. What is the best way to interface fundraising with social media for membership or corporate sponsorship without driving away the audience? This person wants to know, is it better to build loyalty on social and do an occasional support request, or should you use other platforms like email or web?
I think that answer is going to change depending on who you ask, because if you're asking the person who does social, who owns that channel, they may have a very particular opinion than if you ask someone who needs that channel. So to me, social media is a communications platform. It's a way of getting out messages, and it can serve many different goals, not just one goal. So I would say that it's very, very flexible in that way. And the idea of prescribing one single thing as a goal for social media is very restrictive. So I would say that it's an incredible tool for building affinity and for building loyalty and getting your message out there to larger and larger audiences. It's also instrumental in fundraising, especially right now, where the practical advice is, you have to be there where your audiences are, meet them where they are. That is definitely the case for social media. If you don't have that access to that channel, you're really cutting off a major stream of potential revenue.
Jamie, do you have any insights on this?
I do. So at WBEZ, we use social media for content. So our newsroom runs the digital content, and then we also use it for fundraising and then acquisition. So our hands are all over social media, and we've really found the balance where we'll have a paid strategy for fundraising, and then also an organic social for during drive periods. So what we'll do for the latter is we will partner with our digital content team and really look for opportunities to collaborate with them. So we'll take them through our incentive plan and really look for, mission specific messaging or incentives or challenges that we think can be tapped into on the organic social side. And create content with that team. And then also, typically on the last day of the drive, we will have like a news content roundup, really focused on, hey, and all of this amazing news that you've received over the last year or the last period, all these insights, this investigative reports, it's all made possible because of people like you. And we are giving unique tracking links for organic social. So we're actually tracking the performance. We're also providing suggested copy for different members of our team, so reporters and people who are influencers in their own right in the public media sphere, and we're asking them to push out the message as well. And then for paid social, we have certainly like an omni-channel, multi-channel approach where we are using custom audiences from our CRM that flow directly into paid social. So we are reinforcing specific fundraising messages throughout different periods as well.
Great, thank you. Thank you both for answering those questions. Jamie, I wanted to talk with you a little bit about your experience coming from public media from the outside. Before you were at WBEZ, you worked as a senior relationship manager for Enjoy Life Foods, which is specializes in allergy-friendly food products. That sounds really interesting. What decisions and changes did you make early on that you have really made a difference in WBEZ's fundraising?
Sure. So first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here with such a great group. So yeah, I joined WBEZ just over 2 years ago from the natural food and consumer packaged goods world. I worked on an allergy-friendly food brand called Enjoy Life Foods, which serves the gluten-free allergy needs communities. But Enjoy Life is actually part of a larger food group called Mondelez International. So think Oreo, Triscuit, Sour Patch Kids, all of that. But really we operated independently, similar to WBEZ within the NPR world. So at Enjoy Life, we use CRM and email marketing really to create these meaningful communication and engagement, support product sales in store and online, educate the community. And really, we were one of the first brands to be using first-party data for revenue generating online. Unexpectedly, in very similar ways that our digital program was growing at Enjoy Life, WBEZ was using in the membership world and for fundraising. So forever, I was a fan of NPR and WBEZ, and email and digital fundraising is a big part of our strategy. So I was so happy to join 2 years ago to help grow the program. One thing I have to say, and I think this is the biggest differentiator between the for-profit and nonprofit, specifically in public media, is really the sharing, the learnings, what's worked, what hasn't. The way stations are interacting is truly remarkable. just earlier this year, I participated in Greater Public's advisor program for email and product testing. And I was just blown away by the way stations are thinking innovatively and also sharing what has worked, what could be better, and key learnings that we're using as well. So that's just something that's not happening on the for-profit side.
Now you have some slides you want to show about what you've done at WBEZ, and I'm going to have our producers turn that over for you so you can sort of walk us through it.
Wonderful. So hopefully I don't screw this up, everyone.
My fingers are crossed.
Matt, are we good? Yes. Okay. Yeah. So thank you so much, Karen. So, really what I want to do today is share some of the things that have worked at WBEZ and how we are growing our overall revenue at the organization. So the first slide right here, it just shows all the different things that we're focused on, and that's really shaping our membership strategy at BEZ. So acquiring new members, improving retention rate, and increasing donor giving value. And today I'm going to be particularly focused on how we improve retention and overall donor value, and really how we use digital tools and data to inform our decision making. So here are 3 tips to strengthen your digital fundraising program. And this is something that's really worked for us at BEZ. And it's like a digital playbook. So take it, run with it, reach out. I hope it works for you. So the first is to have an always on strategy. So always on strategy. So what does that mean? So we have a multi-channel and dedicated campaigns that are running continuously. So we're really not relying on exclusively on pledge periods. And at WBEZ, like, we're really talking about member journey and taking a step back and really looking at, how can we meet people where they are in their giving level with the right message and at the right time. So to do so, we're looking at their previous donation history, ways that they've responded to messaging, any other ways that we can personalize. So the donation amount request based on former giving, leveraging digital tools like send time optimization. All of these are different levers to help shape our multi-channel strategy. And so this page right here, I'm really showing you specifically what we're doing in digital. So, we have these always on campaigns, and then the ongoing campaigns like e-renewals, high-fi decline, which high fidelity is our sustaining member program, okay. Sustainer conversion, EFT conversion, welcome series, sorry, we're good. These are all the different ways that we're constantly talking to our members.
But before you move on though, can you tell me what, how do you manage all these channels and platforms? What tools do you use?
Yeah, so it looks a lot more complex than it actually is. So we use Salesforce Marketing Cloud for our eCRM, and we're pulling in member data from Salesforce as our CRM. And we really use Marketing Cloud as a prospect CRM as well. So we're not moving prospects into CRM until they've become members. So within Salesforce, we're leveraging it for email. We've recently also been working on, getting things up and ready for SMS, but you'll see down here under member engagement, we are using text messaging, and we're actually doing that outside of Marketing Cloud. We're using a program called Hustle, which I think we we learned from another partner station. But Hustle it's peer texting that our member services team is doing on behalf of all of membership. And what's great about it is you don't have to opt in. So it's more that one-to-one conversation. So a lot of the rules around SMS and opting in, they're out the window. They're not holding us back.
Interesting.
And then just a call out and a huge opportunity. So new member outreach. So after we have big acquisition periods, our team is sending new member texts, which has very high engagement, upwards of 30%, where we're thanking people for becoming members. And there have been studies showing that it does tie to higher retention and engagement post text. We're also using it we're also using text messaging as part of our e-renewal program, which I will speak about next, and our credit card decline series. So I said this always on email program is really important to us, and e-renewals is a huge part of that. So starting 3 months before people's membership is up, we start letting them know. So similar to like a Netflix transactional email where, hey, your subscription's almost up, or hey, your subscription is up. We are sending a 4-part email series to members, just letting them know, like, hey, reminding them, hey, it's time to give. And it's really worked for us that we're not relying only on pledge periods to ask for money, but we're definitely taking learnings from those big fundraising periods and applying to what works. In this case, it's premiums. So the first email on the left, that's an example from our e-renewals. It's just one of the emails, one of the 4-part emails that features 4 thank you gifts. And at this point, the email is going to people who we call in renewal periods, months 1 through 4. So leading up to the months where their membership is still current and they haven't quite lapsed yet. The second email is a bonus tote, and that's a bonus gift where this set of messaging, this is also a 4-part messaging. We're trying to bring people back, remind them why they gave in the past, and also give them a bonus tote as well.
So is this for lapsed members?
Yeah. So starting what we call R5, which is month 13, since the last time they donated, they would start receiving the bonus tote messaging for e-renewals. And we run e-renewals pretty much every month that we're not in a pledge period, though that's not the only rule. For example, this past fall, we had our fall pledge drive in September, and we fell short of goal, and we didn't know if we were going to hit our revenue numbers for the month. So we did an abbreviated e-renewal campaign at the end of the month, just to get us over the edge, with the hope of reaching these people who didn't donate during the pledge drive. Maybe, this renewal messaging would resonate with them. And it did. You could see the 9th month right here, we saw growth, and that was an abbreviated program.
So was all this growth in the chart that started in the spring, is that attributable to your e-renewals?
So yes, the chart on the right, this is only e-renewals. So
Wow.
So this is to show our month-over-month performance. And I wanted to include this because in July, we instituted an annual sustainer option. So we started offering an annual upsell, if you will, during the e-renewals, where if people went to go make a one-time donation, they could turn it into an annual gift. Once again, playing at like retention and how the value of a sustaining member is is higher than that of a one-time gift.
Okay, thanks. Let's move on to the next one.
So the second,
This is really, yeah. Oh, first I want to tell everybody, this is, hard to read, but Jamie's going to describe it. We're also going to share the full slide pack as part of our on our website, and we're going to post it along with the recording. So you'll be able to see this in full visualization. Okay, go ahead, Jamie.
Thanks, Karen. And really, the visuals on this slide, it's just to show you a program that we are running and ways that we are double downing on sustainers. So this is my tip number 2 of building a successful digital fundraising plan. And the reason why I'm showing the journey on the left, which this is a journey that's running all the time, an email journey through Marketing Cloud, and it's triggered when somebody makes a donation, if they fit certain criteria, which we have on the left. So knowing that retention is much higher with one-time donors to sustainers, we're really focused on accelerating our sustainer growth through targeted messaging and innovative conversion tactics. So on the left, you could see as you approach certain wait periods or make certain decision splits, based on how you paid, if you made a one-time decision, you will go a separate route. So if somebody made a one-time donation, they will then be prompted, hey, turn your one-time donation into a sustaining monthly membership. Or, hey, you paid with a credit card, we want to switch you to EFT because there are cost benefits to WBEZ and because there's higher retention, because most people don't change their bank accounts. So those are just opportunities where you can really set it and forget it to help drive your digital fundraising program.
So we have a lot of questions that are following up on what you've said so far. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to pause things right now in the slide presentation, and you can hopefully address a few of them.
Sure.
First of all, do you target your members by what you brought them in to show that you know them? Like this person is, let's see, referring to Newshound versus a classical music lover, or et cetera. Do you have different ways to target the audience and their gifts?
Yes. So shout out to our business intelligence team. We have really smart architecture at WBEZ, and we are leveraging original acquisition campaigns and most recent acquisition campaigns. So we know where people are coming in. Specifically, so an example would be if people are coming in from social media from a specific campaign, as part of our welcome series, we have different routes where we can send, personalized message or use dynamic content to speak to them differently and really personalize at scale. So we receive leads from NPR as well that we integrate into our acquisition process. And, we're referencing NPR programs, why they're drawn to NPR, why they're drawn to BEZ, what place we have, in their world. And that for us has been a really successful way of doing so.
Another person wants to know how you're getting prospects for member acquisition emails. Did you just answer this question, kind of, or is there more to it?
Social media is a huge source for us. We're launching a new app next week that we expect to be a big source of prospects as well. Earlier this quarter, the product team in conjunction with membership and business intelligence, they launched a story wall where we asked for email addresses for people to visit stories that were older than 3 months. So we have many different levers bringing in prospects into the funnel.
Now, a question about your sustainer programs, which you're discussing on this slide. What percentage of your donors are sustainers? Can you tell us that?
That's a good question. I don't want to give the wrong information. I want to say...
You could be rough, approximate.
I think 40, 60%, 50%. If someone from BEC is on, I think our BI team is on. I think that's right. I don't have it right in front of me.
Okay.
But I'm happy to take that as a follow-up.
Okay, great. Have we covered this one, or do you want to move, or do you have more to say about it? Should we move on?
We can move on. I just want to quickly call out. So we use heavy traffic periods to perform tests. So just on the right is just an example of a donation form upsell where we were testing, hey, on the donation form, after somebody goes to make a one-time gift, can we convert them to be a monthly donor with the monthly upsell and then the annual upsell? And ultimately, the annual upsell has worked wonders for us.
Are you using the Hustle app for that?
No, it's directly on our donation page, and we
Okay.
partner with Jackson River, and that process is really owned by our product manager Shira, who's working, with our business intelligence team for the A/B testing. So Mimi, who does all of our analytics and sets up Google optimized programs each testing period. She also supports the testing on the email side, and then, just working with membership as well to talk about overall goals and how we'll achieve them.
Okay, great.
So this one is super quick, but I would say the third piece of the pie is more is more. And I just want to encourage everyone to, ask for money and look at your data and see how you can segment and, send messages and make them really relevant and personalize as you can. And it really comes down to having clean data. But really more is more. So on the left is a screenshot of our actual email plan for our upcoming winter pledge drive, which starts next week. And, you could see we have different emails going to different segments and using engagement data and giving level to help drive, how we are reaching to them. And finally, I just wanted to showcase our NPR 50th anniversary campaign. So this was a digital first campaign, and this is where we were really focused on sustainer acquisition, and we leaned into the bigger NPR story about NPR hitting its 50th anniversary, and I just wanted to show what this multi-channel sustainer focused with premium campaign can look like. And if you want to read about it, we can share this website as well, but we definitely took a risk by only offering monthly donation option on our website, and it did pay off.
So what are you going to be doing for your year-end campaign?
So year end, we are using our data to drive our strategy. So looking at the last 2 years of data, historically during calendar year end, less than 10% of our gifts have been monthly donations. So our goal of this drive is taking the learnings from the NPR 50 campaign and that digital first campaign to drive people to make their one-time donation as an annual gift. And we're doing that by offering an annual sustainer only thank you gift. So on the donation form, there's only going to be one time and annual gift, and it's going to default to annual. And we are going to be tough, and only people who make annual gifts will get the shirt.
Great, thank you so much. It's really fascinating. As you can imagine, one of the questions that we've gotten, and we might have gotten it multiple times, I'm having trouble monitoring all the questions coming in. But for like a small or medium-sized station, what is your advice? And this can go to everybody. How to get started with this? How can you make it doable with fewer staff and more, and the tools that aren't quite what Jamie's able to use?
Yeah,
Melanie,
I
do you
would
want
like
to address that?
I'd like to start with that.
Yeah.
I think, like, first of all, the first thing you do is see where you're at, and pay attention to those tools, and know, just like review the donation form. Like, have you done your own usability testing on your online donation form? Can you do it on your phone with one hand? Do the fields that you're requiring make sense? I'm surprised occasionally we still see where, like a prefix is required or a phone number is required, and you don't necessarily have to have those things, or, do you even have the field? So I think, that's the first step. The other thing is, I shared that example earlier about New Hampshire's online donation form. So one of the big takeaways of the study was a lot of stations, and this regardless of size, just didn't have a clear call to action on their donation form about why people should be there and why they should be making a gift. And so this example, I reached out to New Hampshire to ask them about it. And they said that they put this up and they compared June 2020 to June 2019. And when they redid this, they raised $15,000 more and had 9% higher conversion. And she can't attribute that all directly to having the stronger statement, but she feels like the team do feel like it made a difference. So, that's not a huge thing. And you can go around and look at forums like Jamie's or the folks at New Hampshire, Hawaii Public Radio, WNYC, Minnesota, and KPCC were some of the highest scoring stations in our study. And just look and see what they're doing and learn from them.
Yoon, we have a question about how much stations are spending on digital program or digital ads. Do you have any insights on that?
Yeah, what I showed before, that slide was really about the investment based on how much you raise online. So you can extrapolate from that how much people are spending if they're raising a certain amount of money. Our study is divided into large, medium, and small organizations, and that's done by revenue. So small organizations raise like less than $500,000 a year online. So you can extrapolate, but I don't know, specifically what it is in terms of public media station investments in advertising. I will say you have to start somewhere, and you can start with a small budget, like kind of going back to what are the nuts and bolts that small stations can do. This is one of the things that is a relatively low lift to do Facebook advertising. For instance, Facebook is a really great way to retarget your website visitors, right? And these are people who are much more inclined to be familiar with your station, to want to be able to support it. And you can make sure that you're suppressing people who are already members and just retargeting those people who are visiting and maybe have even visited your donation form but did not convert. So things like that can cost not actually very much money based on the amount of web traffic that you have. So if you're putting aside tens of $1,000s in advertising, that can really get you a very, very long way. If you have hundreds of thousands of dollars, you can make that work. You will see a positive ROI. And I saw one of the questions in there was around digital advertising return on investment. And I would say that the clear hierarchy of where you should put your money is actually paid search. I'm sure many of you have Google grants, and I bet you are not maxing them out. It's really hard to max them out. But paid search is also an important component to go alongside your Google grant. And the return on ad spend for that form of advertising can be like $4 for every dollar you put into it. Paid search is not scalable, so you'll only be able to put a limited amount of budget behind it anyway. And after that, you should do Facebook.
So Facebook is your top one, huh?
Well, I would say paid search and then Facebook.
Okay, yeah. After okay.
And there was a question about classical stations, and folks are like, oh, well, our donors skew a little older. Do you know about age? So I was looking at the Pew research around social media use for 2021. And it says here that for age 65 plus, 49% of folks have used YouTube in some sort of way, and 50% of that group are on Facebook. And 7 in 10 users say they visit Facebook daily. That's overall across audiences. So I think just a little your donors are there. You have a section of donors who are on social media and using those channels.
We've had a lot of questions about text to give programs. Yoon, do you see that as an area for growth in public media fundraising? And if so, how could stations get started?
Texting is huge. If I were, I said digital ads is number one. Texting is probably number two in terms of the new channels to explore. So, Jamie is doing an incredible job with Hustle. That's fantastic. Hustle is a form of P2P SMS, peer-to-peer, messaging. There's two kinds. There's regular text messaging, SMS, that is not peer-to-peer. That's like the mobile bulk messaging systems, like, Mobile Give, Mobile Cause, or I can't remember the name of it anymore. But those require those explicit opt-ins that Jamie was talking about, whereas Hustle does not. The laws look like they could potentially be changing very soon around that for even Hustle and through text, which is the other platform that we often use. So I would just say, like, one of the things that you should be thinking about if you're thinking about growing a texting program is getting those opt-ins explicitly off the bat, because that will serve you better in the end when things change, which they inevitably will. But Hustle, for sure, as she was saying, the engagement rates are so much better. We see for sure that, for instance, the click-through, like when you receive a message on Hustle and you can click on it, the click-through rate is like 6% or something. Like when you compare that to a less than 1% click-through rate on email, you just know that this is an important communication avenue, particularly for like niche audiences, like maybe your mid-level givers or your sustainers are particularly, inclined to respond really well to SMS.
Are there any privacy policies that you need to take into account with these types of digital asks?
For sure, for the bulk messaging, yes, there is standard language that you have, disclaimers that you have to put in there, and the ability to opt out. And certainly the same is true of Hustle as well. The difference though for Hustle is it's a peer-to-peer platform. So, it's a direct conversation with someone in real time. And that's what makes it so appealing to people. So, I think the advantages of that are pretty great.
And we use Hustle to support our e-renewal program. So we're sending out those e-renewals, and then our member services team really owns the messaging and the strategy of who they want to reach and when. And we track revenue that comes in through Hustle separately. So it's its own line item, so we can really see the impact. And each month there is supplemental revenue. So it's a great addition to our program.
I kind of feel like pledge drives are an elephant in the room in the webinar, especially when I looked at Jamie's slide about her always on approach. How does your team balance that against the demands of running a pledge drive?
Pledge is a beast, and it's an all hands, and it's not going away, but we can't rely on pledge as we have historically anymore. We have to meet people where they are, as I said before, with the right message at the right time. And that isn't always on strategy. So pledge is definitely still a piece of the puzzle, but there are other levers that are equally as important. And I think organizationally, getting everyone on board and to understand that can be a challenge. But the numbers do speak for themselves. And, pledge it's special. It's people are involved like all around the station. So I think it'll always have its place, but it can't be the North Star.
No, and I think, and in a lot of stations, it hasn't been. A lot of stations for a number of years, direct mail has revenue from that has surpassed on-air fundraising. And if you think about it, I mean, that has been the primary source of our online donations for a long time, like getting back to donation forms. But again, with this moving towards more digital platforms, people have a lot of choices of where they're going to listen and where they're going to be. And so it's just harder to get a share of their ear to listen to your on-air drives. So we really do have to think about where they are in other places we want to reach them, whether that's through e-newsletters or some of the other things that Jamie talked about, BEZ testing. So yeah.
Great, thank you. Now I have a couple, we're going to wrap up in a minute or so, and I have a couple of questions asking Jamie things. One audience member wants to know, what are the donor amounts you use for annual sustainer membership?
So that's a great question. And I think we're still testing, what the right mix is. I could tell you what we're doing for calendar year end. And it's higher than you think. So we looked at our average gift the past 2 years for new members and then not new members. And our average gift for new members was close to $120 for year-end giving. And for not new, it was closer to 180. So we are going to default on 180 for annual sustainer. We're going to have 120, 180, I want to say 300 and 500, and then other, because a lot of people do make larger donations at the end of the year.
And how do average gifts from digital compare to the traditional on-air or direct mail? I mean, this might be a question for everyone, or for you and Melanie. Do you have any insights on that, Jamie?
Not directly in front of me.
Okay.
Beth from our business intelligence team is on the chat, so she might be able to give some insight into that. But we're really looking. We can definitely segment and looking at average gift by channel, which we do, and then also overall. So I would just say that is definitely a way to segment, if you will. Originally when I was thinking about calendar year end, it was like, well, should we send prospects a lower ask amount, or we didn't want to complicate it. So what we're going to do is use our donation form just to default on the amount that we want people to give, and just go from there.
Can you talk a little bit more about your business intelligence team? One person in the audience wants to know how many people are on there and what's the mix of people from development and digital.
Sure. So it's run by our senior director, Beth, and on her team, I believe there are 4 women, and one is really focused on Google Analytics and just overall tracking and tagging on our website. One is really focused on processes and like CRM data. One is focused on architecture, and then one is a membership analyst who's really focused on how can we improve our program, like really looking at the data. Great, thank you. A lot of interest in what you're doing, and I'm sure people are going to follow up with you after looking at your slides. Yoon and Melanie, do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to add as we wrap up? Yoon, how about you go, or Melanie, why don't you go first?
I just want to thank everybody for the terrific questions. I mean, it's a lot of food for thought too, around like other things that we could be offering programming wise from Greater Public. So I'll be talking to both of these ladies and some of you in the Q&A to figure out how we can start giving more service and supporting that. So, and thanks everybody for being here. This has been terrific.
Yoon, would you like to add anything?
And nothing more to add for me. We could have probably gone on for another hour. So I just want to offer my contact info. If anybody would like to follow up with more questions, I'm happy to respond. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Jamie and Melanie, for all the insights you've shared. It's been really a great conversation. And like you said, I just wish we had more time because there's so much interest. Thank you to everyone in the audience for your questions. And I hope that there will be follow-ups that you'll be able to get more detail that you want. I want to thank my colleagues, Matthew Sekleckley of American University School of Communication and Julie Drizzen, who helped produce the webinar behind the scenes. The recording and the slides will be posted on our website soon. We're rolling into the holidays, and I know it's a really busy time, especially for fundraising, as Jamie let us know. We appreciate all your time and attention, and I hope the discussion will help inform your decisions in the year and the months ahead. Current is also asking readers to help sustain our unique service to public media at the end of the year. You can help support our news coverage and more webinars like this by giving at current.org/donate. Thank you, everyone. Stay well and have a safe and happy Thanksgiving.
Thanks, everybody.